VIU Online presents GEC 101 English Composition, Week 2 Theoretical Lecture, Research, Documentation, and APA Style. This lecture is presented by Dr. Laura Hills, Professor of English at Virginia International University. Many students who are assigned to write a paper want to begin writing as soon as possible. However, there is quite a lot you will need to do before you write your first word. Though many students want to be the thoroughbred horse that wants to bolt out of the gate when the gong sounds, we are encouraging you to be the tortoise and move slowly out of the starting gate. You want to spend time immersing yourself in a topic, getting the lay of the land, thinking about your position in that landscape. And you want to spend quite a bit of time seeing what other people have to say and how you feel about that. You want to know what kind of sources are available. You want to understand your reader and his or her position in your topic. How much does your reader already know or care? If you rush through this, you will not end up with a paper necessarily that is as good as it could be. The time you spend before beginning to write is critical. So think of yourself moving slowly through this portion and not rushing to the writing. Where will you do your research? Now, this fellow is sitting in a library. I know that the majority of my students would be very happy never to set foot in such a place. They want to do all of their research online. And though there is merit to online research, there is also merit to library research. I think the way that I have done research that has been wonderful for me is by finding a book that I'm looking for, but then seeing what's sitting on the shelf beside it, below it, and above it. That's walking the stacks, we say, in a library. And new ideas will emerge from that experience. There is still something to be said for taking a book off a shelf or a periodical, opening it up, and reading it. Not to mention that there's this person in that building called a librarian who can help you. So don't discount library research. Will you use primary or secondary sources? Now, your professor may or may not specify this, but in either case, you should be aware of what you are using. Now, what do we mean? A primary source is a source that says, here it is. The secondary source says, well, here's what the other guy said, and here's what I think about it. Here's a good example. Let's say you're doing a paper for an English course about a Shakespeare play. The primary source is the Shakespeare play, the text of that play. If you're doing a paper on Romeo and Juliet, it's lines from Romeo and Juliet. That is a primary source. Shakespeare wrote it. A secondary source is a scholar who is speaking about Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet. He or she did not write the original play, is a secondary person rather, speaking about it. Be aware, are you looking at the person who created the work, did the research, or are you speaking about a secondary source who is talking about what that person did? There is a difference. You also have to ask, is the source going to be scholarly or popular? A scholarly source is one not only written by a scholar, but generally published by a reputable scholarly publisher. There may or may not be peer review in that process. In other words, the scholar had other scholars review the work for its quality and accuracy before it could be published. A popular magazine or newspaper is not a scholarly source. People write things and they may do very well with them, but they are not vetted by other scholars before they're published. What's required for your project? What about online sources? That's going to be most students' inclination. Let's see what we can find online. And you can find just about anything you're looking for online. The question is it good? Is it credible? Is it a source you can rely on? Is it trustworthy? And if you found it on your own and not through a scholarly database, it's up to you to decide whether it is a credible, reliable, and trustworthy source. Will you do your own field research? You could, for instance, conduct a survey or an interview. You could do an experiment and then write up the results of it. You will need to evaluate your sources for their credibility. Now, what do you think of Wikipedia? Is that a good source for a research paper? The answer most professors will give you is no. It is not, because it is not carefully vetted by scholars, and others can add misinformation to it. Wikipedia is very helpful in some ways, but it is not a scholarly, reliable source. Many professors do not allow you to use it as a source in your research. Will you quote or paraphrase? A quote is where you take the exact words of an author. A paraphrase is where you say what the author has said or done. And this is a decision you have to make. When is it worthwhile to use the quote exactly in the author's words, and when are you safe paraphrasing it? If I said to you, "The sky is blue," you could write, to quote Dr. Laura Hill's quote, "The sky is blue." Or if you were paraphrasing me, you would just say, Dr. Laura Hills said the sky is blue. Generally, we go with the quote when there is something in the exact language that we're trying to get across to our reader. Will you work with visuals and media? Are you going to use charts and graphs in your work, and if so, how? How much of your paper should be quotes and paraphrases, and how much should be you? A mistake I see many college students make is that their paper is really a string of quotes and paraphrases, and I can't find where they are in that. What you have to be willing to do is put a giant "kick me" sign on you. You must make an argument that is yours. Stick your neck out. Be bold, be brave, be clear, and allow the possibility that someone will come along and say, "You're wrong." You have to be a risk taker to be an academic writer. So if the whole paper is simply reporting what other people said, that is not what we're looking for. You use what they said to support your opinion, but it has to be you. You should be there in this paper, front and center. You are the author. So be willing to stick that sign on your back, figuratively, and say, "Here it is, folks. I'm saying this. This is why I'm saying it. Now, if you don't agree, let me know." In academic writing, you must acknowledge every source so you don't plagiarize. There is a treasure trove out there in research, but you have to know the combination and have the key to the lock, and that, my friends, is simply citation. Giving the appropriate credit where it is due to whatever source you find. If you credit it properly and it is a reliable, credible, and trustworthy source, go for it. It's yours to use. The treasure is yours. What is academic integrity? Well, what we are assuming here is that when you submit a paper, it is truly what you are representing it to be. Your own work, carefully researched. You're not inventing sources or misquoting them or paraphrasing them inappropriately and incorrectly. We assume as an academic writer that when you say you have done something, you have done it, and that it is definitely an original work. We also have to consider what is intellectual property. This concept varies from one nation to the next and one culture to the next. But clearly in the United States, we do have this concept that a person who creates text or other works has ownership rights to it. They are the author. You cannot claim it to be yours any more than you could take a famous painting and put your name on it and say that you painted it. If it's published in a work, that is the ownership of that author. And so that author must be credited as having written that work. That's what intellectual property means. It means I created it and I own it. Even if it is just words and ideas, I own it. And you owe me respect and credit for using it in your paper. In this course, you'll also have the opportunity to give and receive peer reviews. And when you do, think positive. Even when you are making a suggestion or saying to someone that something isn't as good as it could be, couch your comments in the most positive ways that you can. We're not here to insult, we're here to help. Make it positive every time you give a peer review comment. There are several styles for formatting manuscripts and documents. At VIU Online, your instructors will expect you to submit papers in APA style. And this is true of every course, no matter what discipline. We've done this to simplify your life. We could insist, for instance, in English that all papers are done in MLA style, and that in your other courses it's APA. To simplify your life, we're requiring online students to learn one style, and it's from the American Psychological Association, APA. Think of it this way. If we all drove on the road and had a different rule about where we drive, on the right or left, we would end up crashing into one another. By saying that we're using APA style across the board in every course, in every paper, we're all driving on the same side of the road, we know what to expect, and we won't have mishaps. So style is discipline specific. And yet at VIU Online, to simplify your life, we are choosing only one style, no matter what discipline you are studying with us, and that is APA style. A hallmark of APA style is that it does not use footnotes. Rather, it uses in-text citations and a list of references at the end of the paper. Let's look at what that might be like. In-text citations, no footnotes here. So this is something that I've taken, I've imagined, I've written a line in a research paper, like Shield and Westerfield, 1999, and LaCourse et al., which means and others, from 2001. This study also. This is how you would do it in the body of your research paper. But at the end, there would be a list of references created alphabetically by author, and this is exactly how APA would cite these sources. One is a journal here, and the second one is a journal. It shows a whole bunch of things, the year it was published, the name of the article, the name of the publication, the volume, the issue, the page numbers. And this is the kind of reference list we expect for you to prepare at the end of research papers in every one of your courses where you are required to write one. Don't worry. You will get the hang of APA style with practice, just as you would if you were beginning piano instruction with us. We would start you with middle C and you would practice your scales. You will get practice in APA citation. This concludes the theoretical lecture for week 2.